Hi there, Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 135 of Ask Boss Bounty. You know the drill by now. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I take your questions from the comment section below and do my very best to answer them for you. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured, leave your question in the comment section below, and hopefully we'll get round to your question next week. We have another bumper episode this week, but before we get onto the questions, I just want to say a massive thank you to my guests from last night's live stream. We had Jason from Yakface, Chris from Bantha Skull, and John Miko from the Facebook TVC group. He also has his own YouTube channel as well, so check that out. He's done his own video all about the Vintage Collection Kitaba figure, so that is well worth checking out. Just want to say a big thank you to you three. We had a blast on last night's live stream. I think at one point we had 310 people watching at any one time, which is a record for one of my live streams, so thank you so much to everyone that tuned in and everyone that left a super chat and all that kind of stuff. I also want to say a big welcome to my new Patreon supporters and channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel in the way that you do, and because you have decided to join, we have got to the level that I needed to get to activate the giveaway. So I will be giving away the Queel U90, so it's an uncirculated 90 gold graded by UKG Queel figure. This will be available to Patreon supporters and channel members, so be sure to look out for that video in the next week. And for anybody else out there that would like to support the channel in that way, the links are in the description below. So with all that being said, if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like down below, and we'll get straight on to the first question. Luke Fernley says, question for next week. Although I do agree with balancing the scales for the vintage collection, something that I've realised is the benefit of being behind on figures may allow Hasbro to address issues found in the Black Series figures. With this in mind, do you think Hasbro might fix the various issues and inaccuracies found in the Bad Batch figures and the Commandos for the vintage collection releases? For example, the Commando Blaster being undersized and the Imperial Crosshair having incorrect armour, save for the helmet and chest. So you're absolutely right. When we are made to wait for some of the figures, those inaccuracies do often get corrected for the vintage collection. And two great examples of that is the IG-11 figure and the Queel figure. Both of those are inaccurate in the Black Series, especially IG-11, because it's just a repaint of IG-88, whereas in the vintage collection we've got an all-new sculpt. So there is an advantage of that. Although I would say it was a long wait, I've got to say, especially for Queel. That one took a long time, considering how much of a big character he was in the first season of The Mandalorian. As for the Bad Batch, we'll have to see what the Hunter figure is like. I would imagine and I hope that it will be an all-new sculpt. But what I do not want them to do is then use that body to do the Commandos, because I think a lot of people in the Black Series community have complained about that. For example, I think maybe those Commandos would need to be their own sculpt, essentially. As for Crosshair, again, we don't even know if we're going to be getting Crosshair yet. We're going to be getting Hunters, so maybe we'll be getting all the others, I don't know. But yeah, absolutely, when they come to doing Crosshair, I'm sure all of those inaccuracies will be ironed out, because they'll have more source material. Destiny Hobby says, do you foresee Hasbro releasing Ugnaughts in the vintage collection line? The secondary market ones are crazy expensive. We could use more Ugnaughts. We absolutely could, and I think I talked about this on yesterday's live stream very, very briefly about the Bespin playset. You know, at that time, that was the time to give us the Ugnaughts, and it really does make you wonder if they do still actually have the moulds for those ones that came out in the Legacy Collection that are really expensive on the secondary market, because that would have been like the easiest repack ever, just to give you those. So it's a wonder why they didn't do that. Will they do it in the future? Well, if they're going to be committed to completing the 96, then they're going to have to at some point. But again, for me, they would have been easy ones, so why haven't they done them already? It seems a bit odd, that one. Middle-aged Kiwi man collecting Star Wars figures says, Kiora Bossk, I've always wanted a trooper landing craft, and they have now appeared in 4 different media: The Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian, and now Obi-Wan. My question is, why is Hasbro so allergic to vehicles? There are so many they could do that collectors would want. Plus, it's been a couple of episodes since the speeder bikes have been mentioned. Yeah, the whole vehicle conversation is a pretty sad one, isn't it, really? I mean, if you look at the ones that we've got since the vintage collection started back again, they've mainly been re-releases, repaints and what have you. We've had a couple of new ones from the Rogue One and a Mandalorian and things like that. But essentially, you're right, that landing craft would be awesome, especially considering the amount of Stormtroopers that we've now got. We're getting the definitive one on the A New Hope card. We've had the Rogue One Stormtrooper. We've had the 4-pack. We would love a landing craft to go with that. Absolutely. I'm with you 100%. Do I think they'll do it? Probably not. I think with vehicles, it all comes down to like how many retailers I can get on board to actually stocking it. And maybe they're just a bit wary about it these days. So if they do something like that, maybe it'll have to be like a Pulse exclusive, or I don't know. But the live stream last night, we're talking about all this kind of stuff. You know, why Hasbro isn't investing so much money in the vintage collection. It's a depressing thought. Your Old Toys says, great video. Quick question for next week. Do you think we'll get a young Princess Leia in the vintage collection? We have all the other main figures. I'd like you to share your thoughts. I'm not too sure if we've got all the other main characters from that show. I mean, we're missing the Inquisitors, we're missing Ned B, we're missing Tala. There's a few that we're missing, and again, on the live stream last night, that was kind of the topic of the conversation. So when it comes to young Princess Leia, I think that'll be a hard sell in the vintage collection. I've got to be honest. I mean, you know, it's going to be a small figure. It would be all new tooling, so it'd still cost them a lot of money to make it, so it'd still be full price. That's the kind of figure that I can see them doing in the Black Series. I really can see that. They did Omega from the Bad Batch, for example. Small figure on that one. I just think they can absorb the costs more in that line, perhaps. Yeah, so for the vintage collection, never say never, but I personally can't really see it happening, to be honest. Mark O says, Tim, when you've done a live stream with Hasbro, do you get to tell them your opinions on what's happening in the range off camera? Unfortunately, you don't. They want to sort of end it quite quickly to get on to the next session, because there's multiple sessions in the day. And this is why I cannot wait for Star Wars Celebration to be in the UK, because I really would love the opportunity to actually have a conversation with them, get to interview them, but also have just like a conversation with them, almost off the record. Maybe they can be a bit more candid with some of their answers or whatever, but it's that sort of two-way thing, isn't it? You want to be able to just sort of express your thoughts without it being like a scripted question that they've kind of checked over before you ask it, so they've got like an answer ready. You really want that sort of natural conversation, and yeah, I can't wait for that to happen. But yeah, with those Q&As, it is quite structured, but we do try and ask the tough questions. Couple of questions about my sort of collecting history here, and the first one is from Jawlocks. He says, hi Bossk, love your channel. Question, have you collected action figures your whole life, or was there a point where you decided it was a childish thing to do, or you got embarrassed of collecting toys as you grew older? I was born in 77 and didn't have everything I wanted, but wish I'd kept all of my toys. And Star Wars Roo says, hey up mate, what year did you begin collecting toys? And not meaning to go off Star Wars, but what's your mask collection like? Thanks Bossk. Channel's been lit with some awesome figures being reviewed recently. Thanks for that, mate. Okay, so obviously when I was a child, I used to play with the toys rather than collect them necessarily. So I think I probably bought my first Star Wars figure as an adult, probably in around 1994 in some old comic shop. I remember picking up a Biker Scout for about £5 loose. And then sort of after that, I think it was the start of eBay. When eBay came around in about, I think it's around the year 2000, 2001. I think I've had my eBay account over 20 years now. I started buying stuff from America, like carded figures and things like that. Not too many, because I wasn't someone that had like a really, really good job or had loads of disposable income back then. I was still in my 20s or what have you. And then I think, as I've said before, you go through a period in life where, I was buying a house and having children, and I wasn't really buying much stuff at all. And now they're grown up a little bit, and Star Wars came back with the Force Awakens and the vintage collection came back. That really reignited my sort of collecting habits again, and I'm all in with the nostalgic vintage collections you can see in front of you here. David Coleman says, hey Bossk, as always, great video and information, appreciate all you do. Thank you for the big Father's Day shout out, for I am a father. Question for next week, are there any card backs in your collection that have suffered damage or deterioration? Is there a state of condition that you would suggest just opening a figure to display off the card? I'm not an opener, but I have a loose collection and wondered if two 1980s vintage Star Wars figures would be better off the card for display. Thank you. So I was actually discussing this very point with my mate Nick from ObiWan Kenobi just the other day, because I was looking through like my spare carded figures and I came across an Imperial Death Trooper, and the bubble just came off the card. It just literally fell off. So I ended up with pretty much a proof card and a bubble and a figure. And that got me really nervous, so I wanted to check the one that I have on my wall. And sure enough, here he is. This is the Death Trooper. Look at this. Oh no. And if you were to pull that even more, it would just come off all the way. So I'm not going to open this one because it's still attached for the most part around the rest of it. But I did have one of these that fell off. I also did a video about the Skiff and Weequay figure. So I bought a Weequay figure that was really, really yellowed, really sun damaged, and there's no point keeping that on card. So I opened that one. In terms of the two vintage figures that you have, not that I would ever tell people what they can and can't do with their own collections, but for me, I personally wouldn't open a vintage Star Wars figure, regardless of the damage. I mean, people even collect cut cards where they just cut round the bubble because it's still a figure that's still in the packaging unopened. So I personally wouldn't open those. I would keep those carded, but you know, it's your collection, my friend. You do whatever you want. And if it's a really mangled card and a really mangled bubble and it's almost hanging off, then, you know, if you want to take the figure out, you do it. Des T says, awesome Bossk, as always, great answers to great questions. Random question for next week. If you could have your face, head 3D scanned and put onto a figure, what kind of character would you choose? A Jedi, a Cantina Patron, or something else? So I've got to say, I find that whole thing a bit weird. I think Hasbro releasing those in the Black Series, aren't they, where you can have your face scanned. That, I just find that a bit bizarre, I really do. I don't really know why I'd want myself on an action figure, but each to their own. But I guess if I was going to do it, I'd have to be a figure with a helmet on. So it covers my head. No, I'm only kidding. Maybe a pilot or something like that, like a U-wing pilot. Maybe a part of Blue Leader's squadron or something, with some decent graphics on the helmet and the visor and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I'll do that. Nino Brown says, great show as always. What is the rarest regularly produced figure, not cardback or accessory variant? So this is a really, really good question, Nino, because it's very difficult to say in terms of rarest, because when you look at something like Slave Leia, for example, we know that that's never going to be re-released. It's never going to be repacked. It's, you know, they're never just going to do that one again. But is it rare? I think there's a lot of them out there, but it's just the collectors that have got them probably don't want to move them on. So that kind of increases the price of them, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're like rare. There was probably a lot of them around back in the day. Now, I've picked out a couple in front of you here because I wanted to look at one from TVC 1.0 and one from TVC 2. And I always look at the final wave of TVC 1.0 because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they were online only. They weren't put out in stores. And I always look at the Sand Trooper because this Sand Trooper mould or Stormtrooper mould is now too old to do again. So I don't think they'll ever release this one again. So not only is it a figure that was in the final wave and was probably produced in less numbers, but it's also guaranteed to never be released again, that figure. It's just not going to happen. So that kind of makes it rare for me. And if you look at prices on eBay, this Sand Trooper is definitely one of the more expensive figures. I think Slave Leia is probably the expensive now. Now Ahsoka has been re-released. Ahsoka is probably still very expensive for a high-graded item or whatever, but now that re-release is out, the prices have come right down. In terms of TVC 2.0, we look at the Imperial Assault Tank Commander. For me, I think this is probably the rarest of the regular released figures. I don't know why. I think the wave that he was included in may have had a shorter production run, if I'm honest, because the R2-D2 in that wave is also fairly expensive. But this is definitely the one that already commands sort of over £100 on the secondary market. So that's the one I've chosen. Patreon supporter Adam Guggenheim says, hi Tim, congratulations on the channel's continued growth, well earned. Thank you very much, Adam. I do appreciate that, my friend. He says, question, so I know you dabble in Lego. How tempted are you by the new ATTE with Phase 2 Cody? Seems like a real winner and good prep getting used to closed box Star Wars collecting. Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I already have the ATTE from, when was it, 2014 I think it is. And I really didn't see too much difference between the set, enough for me to want to get that one. Of course, I would love the Phase 2 Cody as a little Lego minifigure. Hopefully they'll release him in another set. But to be honest, the things that have been revealed for Lego recently that I really, really want are the classic spaceship, the Lego Space. I absolutely love the look of that thing. And also the Lego Castle. I think it looks amazing. And those two things were the things that I used to play with Lego when I was a kid. So it used to be Space and Castle. I can't even begin to imagine what it would have been like to be a kid and have Lego Star Wars. I mean, that would have just been like match made in heaven. But You know, back in when I was a kid, it was just Lego Space or Lego Castle. So those two reveals, I love the look of those, and I think I might have to pick those up. Going Bork says, great vid. Question I actually remembered. So on the new skinny Phase 1 Trooper, I noticed there are no paint apps around the ankles, but the ARC Troopers do. Weird Hasbro mistake, or they just got lazy? So I think what it is, if you look at the Lieutenant, I think the Lieutenant does have the black around the ankles and the Troopers don't, or the other way around. I can't really remember which one it is, and I really can't answer why that is the case. Maybe the VC45 had a running change and they put the black on the ankles for the Lieutenant, and I think the Sergeant, as it is from the 3.75 inch black series, I think he has the black as well. But why, I don't know. I'm sorry. Gavin Gleitzman says, hey BB, question for next week. By the time of next Sunday, the entire ObiWan Kenobi series will be out. So once it's finished, rank the Star Wars shows. Okay, I think that's quite easy for me. I would go Mandalorian is the best of the three, then the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and then the Book of Boba Fett series. And if you wanted a score, I'd give the Mandalorian a 9 out of 10. I'd give Obi-Wan about a 7 and 7.5 out of 10. I'd give the Book of Boba Fett a 4 out of 10. Scott Whitehouse says, after watching the Obi-Wan finale, I found myself wondering if Hasbro might go for a Lars Homestead playset with Owen, Beru and little Luke packed in. Would also be appealing to OT like the Book of Boba Fett Palace. Any chance, do you think, Tim? Maybe a HasLab with a scruffy Reaver and Ben on his EOP as tears. I've got to admit, you know, when you look at that thinking, that rationale of, you know, the Book of Boba Fett playset, it allows for both OT and fans of the Book of Boba Fett to create a scene, although I'm not too sure how many Book of Boba Fett figures we have that could actually go in it, really. But if you're looking at that rationale, then yeah, absolutely, the Lars Homestead would be flipping awesome, wouldn't it? I'd love that. I don't know about a new Owen, Beru and little Luke packed in, because that would be 3 newly tooled figures, and I just don't think they'd do it for the one set. But I would love to see at least Owen as a figure in the vintage collection from the Obi-Wan series. That's definitely one I'd love to see. No doubt the Black series will get it at some point, as we've discussed. But yeah, absolutely, I think Lars Homestead, a lot of people would like that, my friend. Alright then guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you do have a question for next week's episode, please leave it in the comment section below, and hopefully you'll be featured next week. I do apologise for all the people that do leave questions and don't get featured. I do have a lot of questions to go through. I do read them all, but I do have to pick a certain amount, otherwise the video will go on for ages. So please keep persevering, leave your questions in the comment section below, and sure enough, I will get round to them eventually. So thank you so much for the support. Thank you all for watching, guys, and we shall see you on the next one.